also know that you also written this in the report that you are fascinated by how Starbucks early start working with music branding in their coffee
Yeah,
shops.
yeah.
So explain for us their successful music strategy and what did they do right and what can other brands learn from it?
Oh yeah, Starbucks was. I would say that Starbucks was very early on with realizing how important music can be for your business, and it started. I read a lot about Starbucks. I can talk about this for half an hour. I won't. It's very interesting. No, but their famous CEO Howard Schultz. He actually, when he started his first coffee shops, at that time not even called Starbucks, some Italian name. I don't even remember. He was very, very much inspired by like espresso bars in Italy, in Milano, and like that. So. And the American customers they really didn't like that one. They didn't really like espresso that much. They love latte and stuff. So stuff like that. But what they really hated in his early coffee shop was the music. So he played opera, Italian opera, and they hated it. And he realized after a while that he couldn't continue playing Italian opera. So he started to play more classic music, which was better, but not maybe perfect. But then when he expanded his business and had more and more coffee shops, he had one of his store managers. His name is Timothy Robbins. He had this background in the music industry, and he starting to kind of do his own experiments in his store, in his coffee shop. And he really didn't like this classical music. It was like a tape, it went on for 1 hour and then continued the same music over and over. You can still hear that today. It's very, very frustrating
Classical.
for the employees. It actually kills the mood of the staff. So it's not good at all. But what he did was that he starting to experiment and playing a lot of more like jazz music. So he played a lot of, for instance, Ella Fitzgerald or Billie Holiday. And he realized that the customers were starting coming up to the counter and asking, "What kind of music are you playing?" They stayed for a much longer time in his coffee shop, and of course, when they stayed longer, they had more coffee and more desserts and more snacks and everything. So his revenues they just increased. And the headquarter they realized that he's doing something right. This guy, and they starting to implement his music strategy around all their coffee shops. And they also started to experimented with not just playing like Ella Fitzgerald or Billie Holiday, by playing like similar music that was less popular, that was less well known. For instance, to play like Madeleine Perrault or someone else that was not even known at that time, that much in the US at least. And it was just a success story. And music has, I think, since then been an important part of their business. Yeah.
And what about the other brands of learnings? I would probably say I hear you say it all the time. Experiment, experiment.
That's very important. You need to experiment. You need to, if you have a store or restaurant or whatever, you can actually conduct your own experiments. So you just try to if you have some music that you really think that this is the music I want to play, um, maybe have two different kind of playlists, different tempo, whatever you want to try. You can actually randomize and try to play it on different times during the day or whatever, and then just collect the data and see what happens, and see if you have something there. And you probably will see that, yeah, music can influence the business, but you have to experiment because it's hard to tell what works and what won't work. Yeah, and it's also very context dependent, depending on what kind of business you have.
And for me, this is very close to when I used to do events and when you're in clubs, right?
Yeah.
And then in different areas, let's say in Stockholm or London, you have the south, the west, the east, and people choose clubs based on the kind of music is playing. So they've created a brand around, okay, I want to be in the south or I want to be the west, and then they bring in DJs, and then it's testing all the time until they find that what works, what makes people like want to come in.
Yeah, and it could be also the case that if you have a chain, for instance, and you have multiple locations in a big city like New York or whatever, maybe you should actually play different kind of music at different locations, because there are different customers located close to that. So you have this space that you have to consider. And I don't know any studies that have actually investigated that, but that's also a thrilling thought that if you're in Stockholm, you can have different soundtrack based on if you're at Söder, for instance, or you will be at, in the middle of Stockholm at Stureplan. So yeah.